Any other announcements? Anybody got anything? Brian, hey, welcome to the
A little
conversation.
bit. I finally got those games published to the app stores.
Oh yeah?
I ran into a problem. So I did an experiment on 4 games where I wanted to monetize the games, and I was trying to figure out a good way to do it. And what I decided to do was to have ads in the game, but if you wanted to disable the ads, instead of saying, here, pay me 99 cents to disable the ad, I said, I'll tell you what, watch one video ad, and I will turn the ads off for 10 minutes. So it's an experiment.
Yeah.
So we'll
Rewarded
see how it goes.
rewarded ads.
Yeah, it's a rewarded ad that basically just says, don't bother me for 10 minutes. I just want to play the game.
And you manually coded that up, huh? You figured out how to do that yourself, or?
Yeah, it's not that hard. It's just a ad library, a couple of ad libraries, my own ad libraries.
Oh, okay. Because that's one of the things that's Infuse powered. That has been soft launched. There's a plugin for it for Corona. Basically, the idea is to be able to do, your typical static sort of interstitial ads, video ads, rewarded ads, things that are like in-app purchase, those types of things. But everything's kind of
Tied together.
well, yeah, it's all kind of tied together, but it's kind of tiered. So you can stack things on top of each other. So if somebody you could show somebody a static ad, or you could show them a rewarded video, and then if they take some kind of action, and like you said, they get something in the game. And then if someone makes a purchase, then you can say, hey, show this if the person's made a purchase, and then show this if they haven't, and all that kind of stuff like that. So all that sort of stuff is built into Fuse. So it's interesting, that you're following that same path. You're just having to code it up all yourself.
Yeah, I wish I had somebody else code it up for me.
Well, that's the idea behind Fuse, right? It's going to be.
Yeah. I was waiting for it, but I didn't get in. I just said, I pulled the trigger on the thing, and I said, go, and I'll do it. I'll try it later.
I published an app this weekend, and I wanted to put the Fuse stuff in there, but I was kind of like, well, I can push the button to publish now, or I can try to integrate the Fuse stuff in, and I thought, well, you know what, I'm gonna want to do ASO, a little App Store optimization anyway, just to see how my keywords play out and all that kind of stuff like that. So I know I'll be wanting to do some updates pretty soon, so I'll just do it then. So that's what I did.
That's basically. I said I gotta pull the trigger. I just gotta pull the trigger. Yeah. I can do it on the next one.
Yeah, do it now or do it later. You're sitting there, you're like, yeah, I'll just go. Go.
That's the problem I got into. Is I kept saying, well, I got to make this one more change. I think I'll try. Maybe I'll try this. And the ad's like 6 months later. It's not out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on.
Yeah, same thing here. I had a couple of iPad-centric things that I was like, I wish that was aligned a little differently on the iPad. And I just saw it just like the last moment sort of thing when I was making screenshots and stuff. And I was like, you know what? If I stop now to go back and adjust that,
it'll be a week.
It's never going to get published. Yeah, it's going to be another week, 2 weeks before I get back to it. So I was like, okay, look, let's just push the button, and I'll just note it as something that needs to be updated, and it'll be an update. So
yeah, I'd rather get more games and apps out, and later experiment with something new instead of constantly trying to get it just right for the one that I have done.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about. Hey, whoop. Yeah. Hey, Brian. You're officially done with the college scene, right? You're on a summer vacation, right?
I'm on break now, but yeah, there's still stuff happening that have to go in regularly for meetings. It sounds all nice. All you do is teach. No, that's.
Oh, I see. So the students are done with you, but you're not done with all that. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I know. People always talk about teachers get a summer break, and I'm like, really? They don't really get
I'm looking forward to that.
So let's talk about library extensions and all that kind of stuff. Let's get it right into the conversation here.
All right, we'll do that. So I'm going to change the starting point a little bit because I forgot to mention this, and it would have been a waste to mention it twice. What we're going to look at first is an extraction from SSK, and then we'll go ahead and look at updating. All of the stuff we're looking at first is extracted from SSK to demonstrate the principles of what we're talking about. And I realized when I was looking at this code that people would be a little bit confused, and so I'll explain. One of the things I see people do all the time is use the function remove self, and then they get into trouble when they call it twice accidentally. So what can happen is somebody will call object remove self, and the object gets removed, and then later in their code they've made a coding error, which is it's no problem. I mean, people make coding errors, but then they call it again and the game crashes, or the app quits, or it throws a dialog box up and says, what the heck are you doing, you know? And the problem is that object remove self is not really smart. Once you've called it, everything on the object gets stripped off except for the Corona table stuff, or the Lua table stuff. That hangs around, but all of the display object code is removed. The function itself is gone, and so when they try to call it the second time, the function doesn't exist anymore, and that's what causes the crash. Now, there's another function called display remove, which is a function that's part of the display library, and this is where we're going to get into the extending things bit. But this was added sometime later. I don't think it existed initially, but it came around pretty soon after. What I'm trying to say here is remove self was always there, and I think they added display remove a little bit later. And this is superior in that what you do is you say display remove and you pass the object handle in, and it's smart. It says if this thing doesn't exist, don't do anything. So if you pass in nil or you pass in an object that's already been removed, you're safe. It's not going to do anything bad. So now I tell people in the forums all the time, don't use remove self, use display remove. The only reason you would have wanted to use remove self in the past was because previously that was the only way to access the finalize event, but recently the staff have fixed this so that if you use display remove, finalize is also called. Okay, so let's just forget about that. I just wanted to explain why this next bit of code is coming up here. So what I'm going to show you first is some extensions that I've made in SSK to serve my own purposes. And the first of these is I do some kind of complicated things in SSK, and I play a little bit loose and wild with event listeners. And one of the event listeners that I use a lot that causes a lot of problems if you're not careful is the runtime event listener. So what I like to do is set up custom events that get posted out. What is the word? It's not posting. I call it posting. It is called dispatched. So you can create a custom event listener and listen to it, and then dispatch that event, and all objects that are out there will trigger in on that. Now the problem is that with runtime events, if you don't clean up properly and the runtime event comes along later, that listener will activate and crash your code, basically. You'll run into the same problem. So what I did in SSK was I extended the display remove function, the one we were just looking at, the one I say is superior to remove self, and I added some experimental code that did what I called auto cleaning. Now, we're not going to look at the auto cleaning, but the auto cleaning code basically ran and said, is there a runtime event listener out here that is on this object? Let's go clean that up before we remove it, so that everything is copacetic, and if the event occurs later, nothing bad will happen. In addition to that, so let me back up here and actually run the example before we get too far off. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm going to release the code that we're talking about today, and it's in tips and tricks under the Hangouts folder on the GitHub, and under extending libraries. And there's 3 folders: basic, which we're looking at right now; persistence, which is the next evolution of this topic; and then an example using Composer and persistence to keep track of the state of buttons between runs and between loads. So I'm gonna fast forward through this bit. I just want to touch on the highlights of how we do this.